Hello everybody and welcome to another video today. For my first actual video on this channel, I did the introduction, but for my first actual video I wanted to actually take a few minutes and talk a little bit about the current state of my Star Wars book collection. Those of you who have been following me on Twitter know that this year I have been really diving into a lot of the books, both Legends and Canon for Star Wars, and I don't have a whole lot right now. I've got maybe, I think, around 17 books, if I remember correctly, currently, but I just wanted to take a little bit and kind of show you what I've got, maybe do a quick little overview of what I think of them, because I've read all of these, and I have one that I'm currently reading, so that's pretty much what this is going to be. And also there's a little kitty in here, so you may see her pop up every once in a while. So I know I was mainly going to focus on the novels and things, but I've got a couple other extra little books and things that I thought I would show you guys just because. So first couple ones are actually comic books. They're the only ones that I have. So first one, Return of the Jedi Infinities. I believe this is the first issue of that. Basically, what would happen in Return of the Jedi if some stuff happened that didn't happen in the movie. It's kind of a different take on the story, and it's really cool. I haven't read it in forever, but it's a really cool story, so if you're interested in these sort of what-if type of stories, then this is one to maybe try and check out. Next one, the only other comic type thing that I have is the graphic novel for The Force Unleashed 2. I do not have the one for The Force Unleashed 1, but I would like to grab that at some point if I can. And I haven't read this in a long time either, but I really enjoyed reading this when I was younger. I was a really big Force Unleashed fan back when it was coming out, and sort of early 2010s-ish. It was one of my favorite Star Wars things, and I still really love it. But yeah, Force Unleashed 2 comic, it kind of follows the story from Boba Fett's perspective, because he does appear a couple of times in the game. So it kind of gives an interesting perspective on the story, and I really like it. So if you're interested in The Force Unleashed at all, and you think it would be cool to get a graphic novel with a different perspective, then I would highly recommend checking this out. The next three I have are Lego Star Wars visual dictionaries and stuff. I've only got 3 of them. One of them I've had for a very long time, and the other 2 I got a little bit more recently. I don't really read these a whole lot, but I do like to have them and kind of look at them every now and then. So this is my oldest one. Some of you may recognize this if you have been a fan of Lego Star Wars for quite a while. I can't remember when this came out. I believe it was in the late 2000s at some point. So it goes up until 2009. So yeah, this is over a decade old by now. And it has a lot of really cool stuff in it. I always really liked the Lego visual dictionaries, even though I only have a couple of them. But I always really liked kind of looking through them, seeing all the different sets, the different things about them and all that stuff. So it's a pretty cool little thing. Next one is another more regular visual dictionary. It's much larger because it's much newer. I believe it came out only a few years ago. But it is this Ultimate Lego Star Wars visual dictionary. It's much larger, much thicker, it's much heavier. It's got a lot more stuff in it. Of course, it has an extra 8 or 9 or however many years of stuff in it compared to the other one. All the Force Awakens sets and all that stuff. So I believe this one was, I think, 2016 actually, or 2017, because I think the last saga film that it includes is The Force Awakens. It may have Rogue One stuff in there, but I can't remember. But this is a really cool one. I haven't read through the whole thing, but I have really enjoyed my time with it, and it's a pretty cool visual dictionary. And the last non-novel thing that I have, I suppose, is the last Lego one, is the Character Encyclopedia. This came out, this one came out a little bit after that other one. The reason I know that is because it has Last Jedi Rey on it. But, and it also has an exclusive minifigure, Solo Darth Maul, from his little cameo appearance, which I haven't taken out because I don't really have anything to do with it, so I'm just leaving it there. But I would absolutely love to have a Lego room someday when I have the money and the space for more Lego. And if I do that, then this guy is definitely gonna be involved in that, because I think that would be fun. Yeah, I haven't read this one very much either. I've read the other one a lot more. But this one's really cool. It has a whole bunch of minifigures all the way up until the solo sets from 2018. And it's got like Rebels and Clone Wars. Yeah, this one's really cool. Again, haven't read it as much, but I have really enjoyed it. So next I'm just going to go over some of the Canon books I have. I don't have as many of those. I only have 6 of them, 5 of which I've only read this year. One of them I already had. So I'll go over the first one that I had first because it's my least favorite one and it's kind of quick anyway. But it's Star Wars Before the Awakening. This came out a little bit, I think, before The Force Awakens came out. It's a cool little book. It comes in like 3 parts, one for each of the main characters, Finn, Poe, and Rey. And it kind of gives a little bit of their background prior to The Force Awakens. So it's a cool little read. I never actually finished it. I read the Rey and Finn sections. I never got to the Poe section for some reason. But yeah, it's a cool little book. It's nothing spectacular if you ask me, but I like it, and it's a good read for if you want something a little bit shorter. I suppose the next one I will talk about is one that I've read a little bit more recently, which is Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. Claudia Gray, I've only read a handful of her Star Wars books, but she has quickly become one of my favorite Star Wars authors. She writes a lot of really great stuff, and this is a really cool book, kind of about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, like 8-ish years before the Phantom Menace. Mainly focusing on Qui-Gon. You really get more into his character and stuff, which I was never a massive Qui-Gon fan. I've always liked him, but I never like got the hype behind him because he's like a really popular Jedi with fans, and I just never understood it. But this book made me like Qui-Gon quite a bit more. So it's a pretty cool story. It took me a little bit to really get into it. I didn't really get super heavily invested in it until like halfway through. But the second half of the book is really good, so I definitely recommend this one because, first of all, it's a great story and it's Claudia Gray. You know, you're going to get a good Star Wars story whenever you get something with her. And speaking of Claudia Gray, my second one, or third one, I guess, that I'm going to talk about for Canon is Lost Stars. I had heard a lot of really good things about this book, so I decided to grab it. I saw it in a local bookstore that I like to go to every so often. Usually when I get these books, it's either there or on Amazon. If I can't find it at the bookstore, which is true for most of like the Legends books. A lot of the Canon ones I can find there, but not so much with Legends. They only usually have a handful of them there. But this is one of my favorite Star Wars books at the moment. It's a very unique story about 2 characters who were childhood best friends turned lovers, and both enlist in the Empire, both pilots in the Empire around the time of the original trilogy, and eventually one of them changes sides to the Rebel Alliance, and it's kind of dealing with how that affects really their entire lives, and feelings for each other, all that kind of thing. It kind of brings you through a bunch of the battles in the original trilogy, the Battle of Endor and the Battle of Yavin and stuff, which is really cool. And so this is one that I would highly, highly recommend. It's not a story that I really was super interested in, and I mean, I was interested in it because I heard it was good, but I was like, it doesn't really sound like my kind of thing, but I really enjoyed it, so I would highly recommend checking this one out. His next 3 are the High Republic, which is a project that began this year. I do not currently have the newest book, Out of the Shadows, which at the time of recording this came out today, July 27th. I do not have that yet, but I do have the other 3 books. So first one, Light of the Jedi, the very first High Republic book. A really, really great book. I really enjoyed this one. It's a great introduction to the era. It's just a great story overall. It is kind of busy, I think. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. Made it a little bit hard to follow for me, but it is still a really good story, and it's a fantastic jumping off point for the High Republic. So if you're interested at all in the High Republic, if you have not read it yet, then this is definitely the place you want to start, because it just kind of introduces you to practically everything. Second one I have here is the young adult novel by Claudia Gray that she did, that came out like a month after Light of the Jedi, which is Into the Dark. I liked this one just as much as Light of the Jedi, maybe even a slight little bit more. It's hard to really say. But this kind of gives another perspective on the events of Light of the Jedi, not necessarily the exact things that happened, but kind of stuff that was going on at the same time, which I really liked. And it's got some great characters, it's a great story. I would highly recommend checking this one out as well. The newest High Republic book that I have, which came out last month, The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. This is my favorite of the three for many reasons. It's just really exciting and heartbreaking at the same time. It's like the first half of the book is like all build up. It's like there's the Republic Fair, which is happening, and the Jedi are there, and a bunch of people from across the Republic and the rest of the galaxy are all there, and they're kind of just doing their thing. And then there's the Nile, who are one of the big villains of the High Republic era, and they're kind of like, hey, we're gonna attack this, we're gonna figure out our plan. And then halfway through the book they execute that plan, and from then on it's just complete chaos, and it's fantastic and horrifying and makes me incredibly sad because there's a lot of pretty nasty things that happen in this book. But it is excellently done. I would highly recommend checking this one out once you've read like Light of the Jedi and stuff. It's a great book. Next, we're gonna go over some of the Legends books. One that I do not currently have with me is The Force Unleashed. I have my original paperback copy from like 2009, which I'm currently reading. I've got it out in the car right now because I read it when I'm at work, and so I just keep it out there. But I do have that as in very rough shape. It's a great story as well. I've been enjoying it quite a bit, and yeah. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that I've read most recently prior to The Force Unleashed. That is Kenobi, a story, as you would assume, about Obi-Wan Kenobi shortly after Revenge of the Sith on Tatooine, kind of becoming involved in the lives of the people of Tatooine and Tusken Raiders and all this stuff. It's a very small scale sort of story, fairly low stakes story, at least in the grand scheme of things. It's not like a lot of other Star Wars books where it's like, you know, some massive galaxy spanning conflict. It's just a small little thing going on Tatooine, and it's really good. It's a great insight into Obi-Wan's character after Revenge of the Sith, and I would highly recommend this one. Next one I've got is the first book in the New Jedi Order, which is the first one in that series that I have read so far, which is Vector Prime. I really enjoyed this story quite a lot as well. It starts the New Jedi Order series, starts the Yuuzhan Vong conflict. I'm not sure exactly how that's pronounced, but yeah, and they're great villains, at least seem to be according to the story, and I've heard they're great villains from many people who've read the whole series, so I'm very much looking forward to reading all of those. So yeah, great book, great start to the series. I can't wait to dive into the rest. Next one I've got here is a book that I read before, and I saw it in the local bookstore, so I decided to pick it up. That is the Old Republic Revan book. As you guys probably know, Revan is my favorite Star Wars character, and I used to really love this book. I thought it was like one of the best Star Wars books I had read at that point, which wasn't very many, but still. I did reread it a little bit more recently, like a month or two ago, and I mostly enjoyed it. I kind of understood more of the criticisms with it. It focuses really not as much on Revan as you would expect for it being called Revan. He is an important character in the book, and there's a solid chunk of it that focuses on him, but it also focuses heavily on the Jedi exile from KOTOR 2, which I'm totally fine with, and a Sith Lord called Lord Scourge. But really what let me down with this book is just that it didn't feel right as a successor to Knights of the Old Republic. It feels much more like it's supposed to be a tie-in to the Old Republic MMO, rather than a sequel to Knights of the Old Republic, the original 2 games, which it kind of is trying to do both at the same time, and it just doesn't quite pull it off, I think. In some ways it does, but in other ways, in most ways, I think it doesn't. It's still a good story on its own, but as a sequel to Knights of the Old Republic, that's where it kind of falls flat a little bit. But it's still a pretty decent story. I would recommend it if you're into Knights of the Old Republic. I just know it's a very divisive one, so don't expect to love it. Next up is actually a trilogy. I'm kind of going in chronological order now of where I have these, because that's just how I have them set up on my little bookshelf here. But this is actually a trilogy. These are the first Legends books that I read this year. I believe the first actual books that I read this year was the first two High Republic books, Light of the Jedi and Into the Dark. And then after that, or I think I read Into the Dark while I was reading this. I read the first book, and then Into the Dark came out, and so I read that. I think that's how it went. But these were my first Legends books for this year, not my first ones that I've read in general, but for my current getting into the Star Wars books, these were my first ones. The Darth Bane trilogy, still I would say my favorite Star Wars books that I've read this year. I think they're absolutely fantastic. First one, Path of Destruction, as well as the second one, Rule of Two, recently got released as a part of the Essential Legends collection, which is kind of a new thing that the Star Wars Del Rey is doing, re-releasing some of the biggest and most influential and most important Legends books as part of the Essential Legends collection, which is really cool. And if it weren't for the fact that I already had these, I would probably grab those. Maybe I still will at some point if I have a little extra money and I feel like getting them. I don't know. It's a really fantastic trilogy. Again, it's probably my favorite Legends stories that I've read so far, and possibly also my favorite Star Wars stories within the novels that I've read so far, whether they be Legends or canon. I just really love this. Bane is a fascinating character to me, and I really enjoyed his story. Out of the three, I would say the first one's probably my favorite, just because the first part of it is kind of Bane prior to becoming Darth Bane. At the time he was called Dessel, that was his name, and kind of his life prior to that, and becoming a part of the Sith army, and then later a Sith apprentice at the Academy on Korriban, which a lot of these books also appeal to me quite a bit because they're connected to Knights of the Old Republic in many ways. The Sith Academy that Bane goes to, I would assume, is the same one from Knights of the Old Republic, which I really like, and it kind of goes really deep into Sith teachings and philosophies and all those kinds of things, which I really liked. I think the Sith are absolutely fascinating to learn about, more so than the Jedi. I'm more of a fan of the Jedi just because they're the good guys, but I find the Sith more interesting. But yeah, Darth Bane trilogy, fantastic stories that I would highly recommend if you're looking to get into Legends and you've never really experienced it before. Alongside the Thrawn trilogy, which I'll be going over in a few minutes, Darth Bane is definitely what I would also recommend because they're just fantastic. Next one I've got is Darth Plagueis. Again, another really great story, another sort of Sith-focused story, and I really love this one as well. Kind of like Master and Apprentice, it took me a little bit to really get into it. But once Palpatine came into the picture, because he is Darth Plagueis' apprentice, once he kind of comes into the story, things really get interesting, I think. And that's like a third of the way into the story, maybe a quarter, I can't really remember. But it's not super far into the story. But that's when things really get great, and pretty much once you get past the beginning of the story, which wasn't as interesting to me, though maybe if I went back and reread it, maybe I'd find it more interesting, because at the time I wasn't really invested in Plagueis' character at all, whereas now that I finished it, I am. So maybe I'd find it more interesting, but like the vast majority of this book is awesome. If you're interested in Darth Plagueis or Palpatine's origins, or the prequels in general, especially The Phantom Menace, this book heavily connects to the prequels, especially The Phantom Menace. The end of the book even ties into the events of The Phantom Menace. It kind of covers a few of the things that Plagueis and Palpatine were doing during that movie, so that's really cool. But yeah, definitely recommend this one. This is another Legends book that I've read so far that I would say is an absolute must-read if you're a fan of or interested in Legends at all. Next one I've got is a book that I think is super underrated. I never hear anybody talk about it. I mean, occasionally I do, but not super often. And that is Outbound Flight. which the Outbound Flight project was first mentioned in the Thrawn trilogy, so kind of ever since I read that, I've been interested in this book, which kind of goes over what that was. It's a fantastic book. It's set during the Clone Wars time period. I can't remember if it's prior to episode 2, I believe it is. Yeah, because Anakin at the time was younger, so this was between episodes 1 and 2. And it's really fantastic. It's a great book. And it also has Thrawn in it because it's Timothy Zahn. He pretty much, as far as what I've read, which is only the Thrawn trilogy, this book and the book that I'm going to talk about next, he has included Thrawn in every single one of those books. So he's in this. He's great. So yeah, if you are looking for a legend story that is not maybe as talked about, then this is definitely one I would recommend. Next one, this one's probably going to be a bit quicker because I wasn't as much a fan of this one. I still liked it, but I wasn't as interested in it. Choices of One by Timothy Zahn. It's kind of a sequel to Allegiance, which I have not read. I just saw this again in the bookstore that I go to every once in a while, and it was only like $2. A used book that was still in really good condition, so I was like, yeah, I'll pick it up, why not? Kind of introduces like Mara Jade, and kind of takes place, I believe, between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. It's got like the original trilogy characters and Mara Jade and Thrawn, of course. It's a good story. I didn't think it was anything incredible, but it was a good time. And the last ones I'm going to talk about, which I've already mentioned, the original Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, The Last Command. Heir to the Empire is like possibly the most popular Star Wars book ever written. So I was definitely like, I need to check that out when I kind of started getting back into the books earlier this year. The Thrawn trilogy was one of the first ones that I read. I read Darth Bane, and then I immediately read Thrawn. And this is a great story. It's set after Return of the Jedi. For a lot of people who are Legends fans, who either just prefer Legends or aren't really fans of like the sequel trilogy, these are like episodes 7, 8, and 9 for them, which I can definitely understand. It's very much, it doesn't really feel like another trilogy within the saga in the same way that the sequel trilogy does to me, but this is very much like a sequel to the original trilogy, if that makes sense. It feels like a continuation of that story rather than a continuation of the overall like saga. Another adventure that happens with the original trilogy characters after the original trilogy. I don't know if anything I just said made sense, but oh well. So this is a really great trilogy. One of my favorites within Legends. I wouldn't say it's on the same level as Darth Bane or even Darth Plagueis, maybe not even Outbound Flight, but it's a great trilogy. I really enjoyed it. And if you're a fan of, or interested in, I guess, what things were looking like after Return of the Jedi and the Legends timeline, this is definitely one to check out. And if you're interested in Legends and you haven't really checked any of it out, many people say that this trilogy is great to start with, which I would agree with. And it's like the first Legends stories, or the first expanded universe stories, or whatever you want to call them, that came out really ever. I mean, there was a couple other Star Wars books like Splinter of the Mind's Eye and stuff that came out, I believe, in like 1978, 1979, which was kind of the book sequel to A New Hope, at the time just called Star Wars. But then of course Empire Strikes Back came out, so that was kind of non-canon pretty much from the get-go. But that was technically the first Legends story, but I mean, when it comes to the actual like creation of the expanded universe and kind of kick-starting all of that, these books are what started that. So they're awesome stories, and they're also incredibly important within the Star Wars franchise, I guess. I wasn't originally going to talk about these, but I guess to finish off this video I will just briefly talk about them because I have them. The box set, Star Wars 1 through 6, the Junior Novels by Patricia C. Reed and Ryder Windham. I've had these for a very long time, and I haven't read them in a very long time but and I probably won't be reading them anytime soon because they're the junior novels. If I want to read the stories from the films, I'll probably just get the regular novelizations, which I intend to do at some point. But I loved reading these as a kid. I still have them, so I figured I'd show them off real quick. So that is pretty much all I've got for you guys. I know this video is probably quite long. As of right now, I've been recording for a little over half an hour. But I just thought it would be a fun sort of first video to do, show you guys the collection that I've got right now, which I will hopefully be adding more to quite soon. And I hope to eventually have like every single Star Wars book that you can really get your hands on, but that's going to take a very long time, of course. But you know, I've just really enjoyed diving into these books, both in Legends and Canon. And so I thought I'd just kind of go over all of them, tell you guys a little bit about them, what I thought of them and everything. So that's pretty much it for this video, I suppose. So I will see you guys next time.